Welcome back to The Lift. This is episode 12. I'm Linda LeBlanc.
And I'm Tyra Sellers.
And we are so excited to have our special guest with us today. Dr. Carol Pilgrim is a professor at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She not only has served in their Department of Psychology, she's also served in the Higher Education Administration as an associate dean. She has had a sustained, productive, amazing career in behavior analysis, and she's actually kind of one of my heroes. And so the opportunity to have this time with her is very exciting to me. And I'm lucky enough in the last few years to have had several of these opportunities to connect with her. And that's been something that's really kept me interested in behavior analysis. And I forgot to mention, she's also the current president of the Association for Behavior Analysis International. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's a real honor to be here and join you and Tyra.
I'm so excited to have you with us today.
So we're going to be talking about this notion of having a sustained career and continuing to grow and evolve throughout that career. And, you know, we invest so much early on to have the opportunity to get in the game, you know, the undergrad, the graduate work, the thesis, the dissertation, the everything you do to try to get that first job, and to think about all of the reinforcers that you might get. We often don't think 20 years down the road and what those reinforcers are going to be like, but they can really be different and amazing.
I agree. And we have a quote, as always, that will lead us into the content today. This quote is from Nelson Mandela, and I mess up even the short quotes, so I'm definitely going to mess up this one because it's long, but it reads, "There is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living." And I think that sweeping feeling of you really need to be all in and thinking about the now and your future sets a great tone for what we're going to be talking about today with you, Carol.
Sounds wonderful. Nelson Mandela is such a great personal hero that those are true words of inspiration.
Well, Carol, you know, you got your PhD from the University of Florida, and then have you spent your academic career at UNC Wilmington, or did you have a different position before that?
I went to UNCW directly from graduate school in Gainesville, Florida, never thinking that I would have my entire career there, but it worked out pretty nicely. And so I stayed. I was thinking about, well, so many of the comments in the chapter that you two made resonate deeply with me. But when you talk about some of those pivotal decisions, where you take your first job is right up there. Like I said, I wasn't planning on being there for almost 40 years now. So choose wisely. You don't know where you're going to end up.
Mm-hmm. And similarly for me, after my internship and postdoc, which was an important decision, going to the Kennedy Krieger Institute gave me a lot of career opportunities. I wasn't at all sure that I wanted to be a professor. In fact, I was pretty sure I didn't, but my major professor disagreed with me. And so I was considering different options. And if I had not decided to take a 1-year visiting assistant professor position just to see what this gig might be like, it would have I would not have ended up as a professor for 15 years with all of the expectations and resources and structure that supported me becoming a better scientist.
I love hearing both of your paths. You know, I went back into clinical work right after I finished my PhD. So my story doesn't sound like yours, but that led me to some of my greatest mentors and best friends, like Dr. Linda LeBlanc, and led to many different opportunities. So I think the idea is, the choices we make have so many different possible ramifications, and to be as thoughtful as you can. But I could have never foreseen that I would have ended up, after going into clinical work, going and getting a job at a university. So you sort of never know what opportunities are going to present themselves.
It's really true. And I should add, it's not like I got my first job and never changed from there, because I've had several different hats even at the same university. So same location, but really some very different positions. So
Would you be willing to tell us a little bit more about those decisions and what led you to go pursue those things?
And in particular, Carol, I'm interested in what things did you discriminate that, like, oh, here's a choice point or an opportunity? Because I think that's what folks often struggle with, is even attending to those things.
Yeah, both of you raised really good points. I think for myself, I was in a, regular academic progression. I had moved through the ranks, and I was really happy with my research and my students. There were some other things going on, to be honest, in my academic department, though, that didn't feel entirely comfortable to me. And I think it was that kind of being in touch with what's making me happy to go to work every day versus, that when you're driving into work and you get a little bit of a sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, that's not good. And those were the points at which I think I became a little bit more open to looking at some alternatives. At about that same time, opening was posted for a position in the dean's office at UNCW in the College of Arts and Sciences. I don't know that I would have looked seriously at that possibility if it had come a year or two earlier. But at the time, sometimes the timing of things, you just pay attention. And I said, well, maybe I'll give this a shot. This could be an interesting time for me. I feel good about what's already going on, kind of got a handle on that. Let's try something new. So it's a little bit similar to something Linda said a moment ago, that willingness to kind of take another step and, well, let's see what this does. What kind of new skills could I learn? What kind of increased impact might I be able to have by working at a different level? What can I learn about the broader systems outside of my department? Those all seem like very valuable possibilities and worth taking a shot at. So that's when I applied and began my position as an associate dean.
I love that combination, the way you described that, of there might be reinforcers over there, but a certain amount of not need a little something different right now in that experience really changes the potential value of those unknown reinforcers, and sometimes leads you to be a little bit more willing to explore other things. And it is important to notice those subtle changes in your enjoyment of your work experience, because there'll never be a time in my life when I won't want to be geeky and talk about science and also serve clients and all of that. But there are different times when you encounter things in your workplace that don't feel as comfortable. And sometimes you can respond to that by adding in something that's a little different, that maybe serves as a really nice distractor or substitute for a while.
Yeah, it was For me too, a nice option because there was not a ton of risk involved. If I didn't like it, I still had my lab, I still had my students, I still could teach. My position in the department didn't go away. So it was worked out to be a win-win situation for quite a while. I was in that position for 9 years. There were a number of administrative changes at my university, and then that position started having some some different movements as well. So that was time for another switch, and I went back to the department full time. So it's been, I wouldn't trade it. It was invaluable experience, and I learned so much that I think helped me become a better behavior analyst, maybe indirectly, because I did learn about the way systems have to work and how you can work within a system to affect change. And hopefully I'm able to bring some of that to bear when I decided to maybe be involved in ABA at a higher level again. So it's an interesting thing, a career, how you get these options before you and you decide which ones feel right at the moment. It can be for a variety of different reasons, I think. And sometimes you take the plunge and try it out.
Love it.
You know, the chapter and you, Carol and Linda, both have talked about these critical decision points and that they're important to pay attention to or make space for if you're going to have a long career, a career that is, you know, maybe exciting and grows and changes with you. And one thing that I have found with folks that maybe are a little bit junior to me who may be asking about career advice or things like that is that often they struggle with making a decision. They're worried it's the wrong decision. They're worried there could be a better decision. And I think it would be so fantastic if you two might share some of your takes on, you know, how far do you go with, say, a pro-con analysis and kind of ruminating over something before you just say, I'm not going to make a decision, or you pull the cord and make a decision, because I think folks need to hear that. Like my take is at some point you just have to make a choice. And if it turns out that it didn't put you in the place you kind of wanted to be, or you don't like that place, guess what, everybody, you get to make another decision. So like, just make a decision. What has worked for you both, or what do you kind of counsel or tell folks when they're coming to you with decisions that they need to make?
Well, you know, one of the things I always say is, don't worry about that until it's your decision. That is, don't turn down the job you haven't been offered. And, you know, I think that notion of just apply, because you learn a lot more about something in the application process, whether it's at a university, whether it is part of a change in administration, whether it's a promotion in an organization or what have you. The process of applying gives you the opportunity to think about, well, what questions do I want to ask? They're not just interviewing me, I'm interviewing them. And I don't need to have any anxieties until I get the offer. And, you know, if you're lucky enough to get multiple offers, then okay, now you really start thinking about which of these are right for me and offer me what I want. And, you know, I am part of a dual career couple, which adds a little bit of an extra layer. So both my husband and I were professors, and in related fields. We have slightly different takes on it, but those not in behavior analysis could easily see us and think we're identical. And, you know, sometimes you get lucky. There were several open positions on the market when we were looking, and there were several where there were two, you know, in different, near each other, or, you know, same department. So then we did have a choice to make that was really about these all seem like apples, but that might mean we're not thinking about some component of it that's a differentiator. And Tyra, I know you have talked about this too. Part of we had to make our decisions together at some points. We made our decisions separately at later points in our career. But part of it was about that notion of what do I want my day to be like? What do I want my life to be like? And I also kind of rose through the ranks, and higher education administration probably would have been the next step. And I can remember thinking, well, I said I'd try this 15 years ago, but what I didn't end up doing was running a human service organization the way that I had thought I really wanted to. And had even thought at some point about wanting to be part of like a lifespan disabilities institute, like at University of Kansas. So I thought, well, gee, would I rather be a dean or associate dean, kind of running how colleges work? Or would I rather be a dean running how ABA services work for people with special needs? And the second one felt like the days that I wanted to have. Carol, what about you?
I don't know. What I love about talking to you two and reading the book as well is that you really force me to try to articulate some things that I've always just done and never really had to say. But in making decisions, I don't know that I have a one single strategy. It depends on the particulars of the choice. I always found invaluable, once you do get to the point where the choice is offered, is talking to good friends and colleagues, especially ones who have been in similar positions, and just not to ask for what I should do, but just talk through with me what I'm looking at here. Often a chat with someone else, and I try to do this with my students or former students as well, as not to give the guidance, but to ask some questions to help prompt some directions for thinking. And it's that circle of colleagues that can be very useful, often in saying, you don't like to do that. How much time? That will drive you crazy. Or this is right up your alley. You really could have fun with this. That kind of feedback can be very invaluable. At the end of the day, though, I think you get kind of a sense from talking with the people in the spot where you're thinking of going, of whether that's going to be a good fit. And I like something that was just said, that Linda mentioned a moment ago. What am I going to be doing on a daily basis? What's my day going to be like? It's nice to think in terms of the big picture, grand end points, but what makes you happy in your career is, am I having fun? Not that, and I don't want to cast that the wrong way. There's always going to be parts of any position that aren't fun from moment to moment, but am I going to be enjoying my life on a daily basis? That's sort of what you really want to get a crystal ball to show you. Unfortunately, those don't exist yet. So you got to take your best guess, I think.
That's right.
That's
Tyra,
true.
you've been super brave at making change already multiple times in your career. And I know that you've thought through that in various ways. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think like Carol, I struggle, and I've shared in previous episodes that I struggle with tacting a lot of my covert behavior. I hate to be non-behavioral and say I'm just intuitive and I do the things, because that sounds terrible. Clearly, I am responding to my learning history and the environment, but I'm obviously not really good at attending to and discriminating those things well. So I suppose all I can say is I'm not scared of getting it wrong. I'm more scared of being regretful or missing an exciting opportunity where I could have potentially failed miserably, but in doing so, I would have learned a lot. So I suppose, to me, if a choice point involves the choice between something great, but sustained and similar versus something great but different that will push me, I'm more likely to allocate my choices towards the new thing or the thing that's a challenge. And there may be something in my history. I mean, I'm not like a risk taker or anything like that, but I don't, and I don't also think I get bored easily. I mean, I've been married for almost 30 years, so clearly I don't have commitment issues, but I like to continue to learn, and I like a little bit of discomfort. So I suppose for me, some of those decision points are, can I detect that there's a learning opportunity that is exciting to me? And then I really do kind of make a list of reinforcers. Like, what do I love about my current situation? And can I have that or an approximation of that or better in the new situation? And is there new learning? And then I'm good to go. So I suppose that would be it.
Yeah.
And just know that you're going to make some mistakes that you were like, oh, that was not the best choice I could have made. And then you just make a different one. That's okay.
Well, and I think what you just described is that really being able to articulate your values, your reinforcers. This is what I like. This is what I can tolerate. And this is going to be a no-go. That's just a hard pass for me. I do not want to be in an environment where there's this or that or the other thing.
Yes.
That when you can do that, you really can bring a lot more to your decisions rather than just that intuitive, which, intuition's a good thing too. It's very often what we have before we formulated and said out loud what the values and reinforcers are. I do think that sometimes a promotion seems valuable in and of itself. And, Carol and Tyra, you were in the academy as well. Like, here's the way that works. You're going to bust your butt for a certain number of years. And then they're not only going to decide whether you get a promotion, they're going to decide whether you get to keep your job if you are on a tenure track. And then there'll be another promotion after that, perhaps, but the promotions are very few and far between. And in the private sector, that's not the case. The promotions can actually come very quickly, and the promotions opportunities could come because of somebody else's needs, not yours. So that is, we need a clinical director or a director of muckety muck, what have you, starting a new thing. And you might be capable and offered that promotion. And in fact, it might mean it's a wildly different job. And I think that if you really don't know what your values and your reinforcers are, it seems like I'd be crazy not to take a promotion. Why, of course I should do that. And yet sometimes that can erode what feels like it erodes is your love of the field. What it actually erodes is your happiness in your current circumstances. Have either of you seen situations, no need to give names, but where someone maybe took what seemed like a promotion and an advancement, and it just, it made them unhappy?
Yeah. Carol, have you?
I have. I think it can be, well, I know the world of academics better than the private sector, but often promotions may be easier to come by than raises. but you might only have an opportunity for a raise if you do change to a different position. And so people will be in life situations where they feel like that's something that the raise is important, because they're taking care of their families, etc. And it always sounds good to make more money, of course, but when that dramatically changes the job, and it, as you say, it often does, I've seen that backfire badly in a couple of cases where not only was the person miserable, but they couldn't really excel at the position because it was so different than what their skill set was and what their reinforcers really involved. So you could it was terrible to see it happen in real time. And sometimes counseling the person to maybe this wasn't the best move is a good strategy at that point. But yeah, it can work. That match between what you're signing on for and what you're going to be able to enjoy and do well at, it needs to be there.
Yeah, I agree. Those are really, really good examples. I have seen similar situations. I think what happens commonly is because someone is good at what they're doing now, people make the mistake to assume that they will be good at the next level, which is sometimes absolutely the case, but sometimes not. So I think that's something to watch out for each of us in our careers, right? Like just because I'm really solid at this does not necessarily mean I either have the skill set or want to develop the skill set to be good at the next thing. And that usually comes kind of from the outside where someone else is like, hey, like Linda said, I need someone to fill this position. You do great at your job. The question is, cool, but what about what I'm doing great now will translate into me doing great then? But I have seen one instance, and Linda, you may have seen this once or twice, where someone really thinks that they want that job. They've sort of talked themselves into that's what I want, and I, maybe in one instance I even thought like, yeah, you really do want it, because they seemed so convicted. But then when they got into the position, they knew what it entailed, but they didn't like it and they weren't good at it. And that feels terrible.
Yeah. You can be a really good scientist and a terrible department chair, just as an example. But, people who decide, yeah, I'd like to be chair of the department, can be a very different skill set for sure.
That to me is one of the biggest differences, is when you switch from doing the content of your job to managing people who might do the content of your job. Right. And, those are different skill sets, different interpersonal skill sets, different decision-making skill sets. You are more of a facilitator than you are a doer. And it's not always the easiest transition, and it's not always enjoyable. And I know many people who get jobs in ABA, the switch from managing the services that are provided to their clients to managing and supervising people who now do that task can be a difficult one. And it's this combo of, I no longer get to do that stuff I really loved and why I got into this field. And I have to do these other things that I never imagined that I would be doing and that I actually don't like. And, that really can be, quite a 1-2 punch. I have seen just a few times, and when I have seen this, I just was so admiring of the people who made the decision. But I've seen a few times where people realized that and said, nope, give me back my old job, please. Yeah. That I was amazing at that, and I want to continue to be amazing. And that's not always possible, but it's more possible than you think if you can be brave enough to ask for that, and you're in an environment where the people in it want to see you be successful and are going to benefit from your success in whatever domain. That's just, but it's scary to do that because we have these wacky rules about if you're a successful person, then that means you need to succeed at all of the things. And so now this is your thing. And so how are you going to succeed at that? And succeed and be happy are not always hand in hand. Indeed. Well, Carol, one of the things that I have, in addition to your switch into administration and academia, you have also been involved in various aspects of our field in various leadership positions. And what has that been like to add that into your professional experience? What do you get from those kinds of things?
Oh, gosh. Well, when you were talking about finding your own values and reinforcers in your career, I would list my involvement with our professional organizations and journals as being the very top of that list. I think of those kinds of positions very much as service positions, and it's a way to really, I think, try to have some give back to the field that has given me everything, that's provided my my entire career and so many of my own reinforcers. I just kind of got brought up as a young academician on this is what you do. You're benefiting from these professional organizations. You need to try to help them work as well. But in providing those kinds of services, you have the opportunity to learn so much more about the field and make so many wonderful friends and colleagues, and just learn about different parts of what goes on in the field in ways that you would never contact from just reading the journal articles, right? When you're talking to the scientists and visiting their institutions and feeling the passion from their students, that's what makes all the rest of it sort of worth doing. You sort of remember that this is a much broader enterprise that we're all part of. You can get really locked into your day-to-day work, but we're having a broad impact as a field and as a science, and all the parts need to work together well to help that be as successful as possible. So being able to be part of that is really important to me.
Well, I have a question that kind of follows that for both you, Carol, and Linda. So, knowing your values, great. Knowing your reinforcers, great. Knowing what you don't like, great. But what are some strategies? Because you both have had very, very rich, sustained careers that have included absolutely crushing your job, but also doing all of these other things that have frankly benefited the profession, have benefited me and so many others. What are some strategies that you use to make sure that you can continue to do your job, including the stuff that isn't on that list of ice cream and candy and, potato chips, but you still have to do it, and make time for all of these other things that are so critically important for you to, continue to stay passionate, and hopefully make those yuckier days better. How do you make time for that? How do you keep track of it? How do you stay motivated to do those things?
Well, I'm the last person in the world who should give advice on this because I do it by working all the time and overcommitting. Not always, but I get excited about things. When I saw the Women in Behavior Analysis organization forming, I was full, and I knew I was soon to be coming into even more demands. And I was like, so what? I want to do this. This is amazing and it's going to really add value. And I might just have to shift some priorities and even change some of my organization and time management strategies. So I'm not saying everyone should do this, but I have primarily done it by, if I just can't say no, which I can't say no. But if I just can't, if I just can't say no, I kind of think through, okay, if I'm gonna do it and it matters enough to me that I can't say no, how am I going to say yes and crush it? Because that matters. It matters to me to not kind of do a half-baked job. And so then I start thinking about, okay, what could I change? How could I be more efficient on that? Where could that fit? And you know, sometimes you do get overcommitted and then you kind of pull it back. I've always kind of got a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year plan for digging out of the hole.
Linda, you need a weed whacker. Get out of the weeds.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, but I try to, before agreeing, I'm more selective now than I have been at points in my past. I've learned a little bit and really try before taking on something new, because I'm like Linda, if I can't really give it my all and do a good job and feel like I can bring something to the task, then I should say no, absolutely. But if it's something I feel really committed to, that I do feel like I could make a contribution, my next question to myself is, where will it fit? Okay, exactly where can I fit that in? Can I fit it in? And thinking that through before committing. I wish more people would do that, because I think lots of individuals feel like they want to be involved in leadership roles and maybe take on too much too rapidly at a point where they're not making much of a contribution. Well, that doesn't help their career trajectory. If you're, you know, if you get a reputation as someone who sits on committees but is hard to schedule around and doesn't really pull their share of the load, you're not going to get invited to be on the next committees, of course. So it's really important to think that through before jumping in. It's not ever easy, but I think that's a necessary step before saying yes.
I love all of that. I also have trouble saying no. And a strategy that recently I have tried that is helping is, even if I really want to say yes, and even if I could say yes and do it, I'm stopping and saying, is there someone else who could do this better than I could? And that has been really great, because there are some things that I haven't had to say yes to, because there is empirically someone better positioned, better matched, more motivated, with more time than me. And then I also kind of get that added benefit of, some of doing good in the world is getting the heck out of the way and facilitating other people doing good in the world.
Yeah. Or even if someone couldn't do it better than you, is there someone who could do a really good job who this would be a good springboard for?
Sure.
That's a really important contribution to be able to make as well. Here's somebody who could take this on, and I think it's just the skills, and you might not have thought of, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think when now being the editor of JABA and a few years into this, I will say it's been an interesting opportunity to help other people get their papers published and to make their papers better, and to help my AEs get a little recognition in the field. And to, you know, what I found so beneficial years back when I was an AE is having to see so many papers and make decisions really honed my ability to see, like, that's going to pay off. Yeah, not so much. That's not going to kind of move the field forward or what have you. And that shift at some point in your career to the majority of what you do is helping other people get farther along and leveraging some of your time and effort against all of their great skills and knowledge and opportunity. And I love that. And I'm not having to write all those papers that got published in JABA. I just got to read them and offer a few thoughts. So there's some good stuff with that too.
I love that. Well, I wonder if you two would be willing to share some of the strategies either that you have learned or put into place for yourself, or that you try to teach your mentees, your supervisees, your trainees around how to keep an eye out for career longevity, how to manage stress, how to look for and address burnout before you're like, forget it, I'm going to go be a barista at Starbucks. What tools do you all use, or what strategies do you give to other folks?
Well, I think this is one of the most important things you can do as a mentor. To see someone invest so much time and effort to get started in their career, and then 7 years in decide I'm going to go do real estate or, whatever it is, that just, it feels like a loss for them and a loss for us. And very often what I see is that they think this isn't the field for them, when in fact, a few of their skills are off and aren't quite where they need to be able to kind of like handle the everyday coming at you, so that your head is above that with a view to the impact that you're having and that opportunity to savor your reinforcers. And so for me, it really starts with those core professional skills. And if you're struggling with them, everything seems hard. And if you're really great at these, everything seems easier, and it might seem easy enough. And that's organization and time management, problem solving, and your interpersonal skills. Everything's harder if you can't get along with people. And if you can get along with people and your day-to-day interactions are generally good, reinforcing, and smile laden, most things seem like you can do this, and you give yourself that cushion. So for me, that's probably one of the first things I always look at is, are you sure you really have a waning interest, or is it just that it feels so effortful all the time?
It's really nicely said. And I would just add to that, I think that's the place to start. But sometimes it's the person has significant skills, but they're not a good match with the particular position they happen to have. And so maybe then the skill set is how to look for other options, because there are some bad jobs out there. I mean, there just are positions that are wrong, either in general or for that individual, but they don't need to give up the field because their current position is not right for them. So some really realistic self-assessment of where the issues fall is important. And then I would just add too, staying connected with the field more broadly, safe through our professional organizations, I think is another way to really maintain that contact with why you got involved in the first place, even if your current situation is not perfect right now.
Yeah, I think all of those things are yes. Like, listeners, just make a checklist. Think about those things for yourself. Teach those things to your trainees. I have one suggestion, and mine is very specific. Pick a topic outside of your area and cultivate that to whatever degree you can. For example, when you go to a conference, pick a talk that's completely outside of your area. And I promise you, you will leave that talk with probably a renewed energy and maybe some new ideas for your application, for your profession, or for your area. But that has always been really helpful for me. You know, I'm a social person. I don't have social anxiety. I love conferences, but at every big conference, I get a little overwhelmed, and I definitely suffer from the I don't belong here. Everybody's smarter than me. So I purposefully put myself in a situation where I don't know anything about, this topic. When I go, and I'm amazed at how smart people are, and I'm also amazed at myself that I can understand what they're talking about. So I do feel smart. And that's always been really helpful for me. I don't know if you all have any very specific, try this. If, your meal is too salty, try this, right? That's kind of how I think about it.
I love it. Yeah. Potatoes absorb the salt. That's what you do if your soup gets too salty. I think, and Tyra, I have seen you do this, and Carol, I've seen you do this. And Pat Fryman also talks about this, that work hard when you're working and then enjoy your time off. And I think all of us kind of it can get a little muddled, right? Where we feel like we're working all the time or what have you, or our stimulus controls all a whack, if that's a word, but I just said it. So it's at least for us, it's a word. But, I think one of the things that I've gotten better at, and I've had to, as I've taken on these additional big duties, is when I talk about time management, I talk about planning all the hours and using all the minutes. Sometimes you use those minutes for productivity, but sometimes you use those minutes to catch your breath and to make yourself a cup of tea that smells lovely, and to walk outside and just feel the sunshine on your face for a minute. And I think that's something that you could do almost every day, multiple times a day, even in a busy scheduled day. If you wrap up that prior thing a couple minutes early, you could just make a decision of what small thing could I do right now to boost my spirits? Maybe it's a good smelling lotion, or, obviously I'm a real sensory person, but those little things, when they fall out, things can start to feel hollow pretty quickly and overwhelming.
Yeah.
I like that. We have all kinds of devices that will signal us when we need to stand up and walk around. We need a device to signal us to contact a reinforcer, even if it's just a small one, right? Brighten up your day. I'm also, I have to say, a big fan of vacations. I think everybody needs vacations, and they don't have to be expensive or flashy. Staycations can be good too, but where you really take time, even if it's just a weekend, where you don't get on the computer and you don't pay attention to the emails, and you take some time for you and your loved ones, and not let anything interfere with that. That's critically important to schedule in to busy schedules as well. For me, it's always worked for me. Yeah.
I love that.
Renewed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a recharging, right? But, I think what I hear from you is that go into it purposefully. Don't kind of have one foot in. You need to commit, because you can't be feeling guilty about it. You can't be thinking while you're sipping that lovely smelling tea out on the patio, I should be XYZ right now. You need to say, from this time to this time, I am giving myself permission to not think about those things and to do these other things, or do nothing. I that is something I am still learning, because I very much will sort of sometimes be one foot in both places, and it's not fair to anybody because I'm not doing anything well. I'm not recharging well, and I'm not working well, and I'm obviously not honoring those around me. So I love that idea of like that commitment to, this is my time and I deserve it and it's okay, and I'm gonna be better when I come out the other side. I'm gonna do better.
That's right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of got to be your wellness rule that combats some of the other rules that sneak in on us, that you should be doing that work, that you should, whatever it might be, that if you're going to use a should, how about you should let yourself enjoy something?
Yeah,
I'm okay with that one.
Absolutely. We're supposed to know about reinforcers, right?
Jeez Louise.
That's exactly right. And
But yeah, it's a work hard when you're working and relax hard when you're relaxing. Huh?
and know what those relaxing things are, because I will say this, and I've been in these shoes. Sometimes if you get a little too far down that path of whether you call it burnout, fatigue, overwhelmed, you can't remember what your reinforcers are. And so then when the free moment comes, you're like, whoa, what do I do? Maybe I'll take it down.
Yeah.
And there's, you kind of have to really remind yourself and recontact and reinvigorate your reinforcers to experience them again. Well, I think that note of savoring your reinforcers is a great one to end on. And I have savored this reinforcer of having Carol Pilgrim join us today. Thank you,
Thanks.
Carol, for being with us, and just also for all that you've done as a leader in our field and for being part of our professional lives.
Well, thanks so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed today. Thanks for the invitation.
What a gift this time has been. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us on this episode of The Lift, and we hope you'll listen again.
Bye.